Hey, this is Caleb Johnson from Red Sea Capital. If you want to learn how to use your small axe to build an empire, you should be listening to the Small Axe podcast with my good friend, Nico.
Hey guys, it's your boy Nico here from the Small Axe Podcast. I want to show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. You see, not everybody begins their investing career with millions of dollars, a huge network of investors, or the knowledge necessary to become successful in this space, and that's okay. What I focus on here on this podcast is helping you hone your skills, sharpen your tools to become the best investor that you can be. Now, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this show. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to me or the guest, feel free to do so. Love you guys. Okay, Small Axe community, it is your boy Nico, and I'm back with another awesome episode. I got a really cool dude hanging out with me today. His name is Caleb Johnson. Right now he's based in Phoenix, Arizona, but he's going to give you a little bit more color and context about his personal journey and his story. And then we're going to get jamming. We're going to get talking about real estate, what he's working on, what he's been kicking butt at, how maybe he got kicked in his own butt, and some successes and failures. And we're really going to have a nice time today. So Caleb, welcome to the show.
Nico, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. I'm excited to have you on as well. And you've been, before we even begin, I just want to say thank you. You've been extremely flexible with me and my timing, and just, I'm really glad we got to make this happen finally. So let's do it. All right. Perhaps you can kind of talk a little bit about your personal journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I started investing when I was 19 years old, and the bug was probably planted in me when I was 18. Really, it came from my parents, and not because they were wealthy or they were entrepreneurs, but because they were the complete opposite. And so they both had day jobs. And I think a day job can be great. Some people, they want that, and that's great if they're happy. For me, that's not the case. And that really got exacerbated when I saw my mom get knee surgery, and she had to take off of work for 3 months, and she was living off of her savings during that time. And she was around 60 years old, kind of getting close to that retirement age, and her savings was really going to help her retire on time. But when she was dipping into her savings, she was she was shortening that window. And she got to the point where she just couldn't afford to continue to dip into her savings. And so she was forced to go back to work. She was an occupational therapist. So she's on her feet 6 hours a day. And Nico, I would just see her come home crying in tears because she was in so much physical pain from having to stand on her feet for that long and with this fresh wound. And so that really showed me that I did not want that to happen to me when I was at that age. And I also wanted to help her financially. So that was my big why for starting out. And then I house hacked a fourplex, a duplex, went into a retail facility, and now we focus on 50 plus unit apartment buildings.
Oh man, that's awesome. So you're still a super young guy, man. How long have you been doing this for?
I've been doing this for 6 years.
Get out of here, man. You look like you're like 20.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. I tell people I'm 13 years old, but I got the baby face. So
That's good, man. All right. Well, that's a compelling story, and I'm glad you told it. I know it's so challenging, and we all get in for different reasons, and we all have our challenges, and frustrations. And for some people, it's something as simple as like, I don't really want to work at my job anymore. Other people, like you and me, we see these hardships in others, and we really want to kind of fix something, And that for me is a super powerful why. Thank you for sharing. And let's jump into a little bit about your 50 plus units and how come 50 plus?
50 plus, it's a little bit easier for the economies of scale. And so let's say if you buy a 10 unit apartment building, if you have one vacancy, you're at 90% already. And that is a lot better than single family. But whenever you think about 50 units and one vacancy, I think that's like 2% vacancy. And so you have 50 doors under one roof. just economies of scale, and the more units you generally have, the more investors and the bigger buyer pool you have. So it's just a little bit easier to run it as a business as well.
Yeah, I love it, man. And are you working with a team? Are you working alone? And how's
Mhm.
that going?
I started off working with a team. That's really kind of how I got my foot in the commercial door. So I brought some deals to a group, and were able to provide the capital, the liquidity, the net worth, and the time and asset management experience. And that's how I got started. And today, Red Sea Capital is my own company. Now we still do partner we with strategic partners, depending on the deal size, the structure, how large it is, and that's what we do today.
That's awesome, man. Did you start with a certain mentorship program or mentor or books or podcasts? How did you get started?
Mm. Well, I got started to begin with on the residential side was podcasts and YouTube videos for free. And Bigger Pockets was a huge benefit to me, especially starting out. And on the commercial side, I didn't really have a mentorship program, but I've always been a component of finding someone that has what you want and then adding value to that person so that they can teach you their ways. And so that's how I've been able to get some mentors that have really contributed to my success. And I wouldn't be here today without them, but it was really for free. I mean, I did have to invest some time, but there was no capital out of my own pocket. And for anyone starting off, that's a big deal. If you don't have 50 grand to drop on one of these big courses, you just find someone that has what you want, you add value to them, and that can really help you grow quickly.
Man, that is huge. Can you give us some ideas of how we can add value to others? I mean, I can obviously think of some as well, but maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about that because a lot of my listeners are at that stage too, where they just want to get in so badly. And this could be their in, right? If they could just provide some sort of value, because that's great insight.
hmm Well, there's a couple things. Whenever I was starting on the residential side, I this guy walked into the restaurant I was working at, and he was an agent. And long story short, my friend got two business cards of his, and this guy owned probably five rentals. So at then for me, that was a big deal. And five rentals is still, a good amount of equity and resources to get that. So I called him up after 2 months of waiting to call him, and I said, "Hey, man, I'll work for you for free. I'll clean your toilets at 2 AM. I don't care. Just teach me." And so he gave me, or he told me to read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad 5 times. And so we kinda did that dance for, I think, 2 books and 1 audio tape. So he really wanted to vet me, but he was an agent, and so I ended up working with him to buy my first deal and actually my second deal too. So I was able to provide him with a commission because I was buying that property. Now, on the commercial side, the way I first wanted to get started was raising capital. And so I thought I had been building these relationships for 3 years, and I would have, all these people that wanted to invest. And I did know a lot of people that had capital to invest and they were savvy investors. But whenever I had that first deal, nobody wanted to invest. And so that was kind of a rude awakening. But for me, kind of what got me my first deal was sourcing it. So someone helped me with underwriting and just learning that. I know there's a lot of free resources out there, and if I the my first partner I met at a real estate meetup. And so we were kind of working together, and I said, "Hey Mike, I want to learn this underwriting thing." He had underwritten about 600 deals in the last 18 months at the time. So a lot of deals, he had a lot of experience, and he taught me how to underwrite. He gave me a tool to underwrite as well. So again, no capital out of my own pocket, but once I had that knowledge and that tool, I was able to go to free resources like Crexy or LoopNet and write down brokers' contact information. call them up and say, "Hey, this is my buy box. This is what I want to buy. Do you know anyone that's looking to sell that owns something like that?" And whenever I got rent rolls and T12s, I was able to plug them into the tool, underwrite them, and then present them to my partner, Mike, who in turn we were kind of able to, we had to go through a lot of bad deals. But I was kind of the vetting process, and I would just bring the deals to him that actually worked, and that's how I got started.
There is a lot of really, really awesome stuff you said in there. Caleb, for my listeners, they're gonna, I mean, they could take a lot out of that. That's just huge value, right there, because you're providing value to other people. You're not necessarily asking for anything in return per se, but you're getting things in return, just based on what you're willing to offer and what you're willing to do to get that. And stepping into the commercial space, learning how to underwrite is paramount. I mean, if you don't know what a deal is, and you can't bring a deal to somebody, because there are people out there who are, novices, and they're just grabbing any deal off Crexy and LoopNet and saying, "Hey, look, I got this deal," and they're, daisy chain brokers trying to take those deals and sell them to other people, but they don't know what they're doing with underwriting. So
Mhm.
it's absolutely necessary. So you spent the time and effort to kind of really dive in. You learned from somebody who had already underwritten 600 deals. That's insane. And you learned that most of the deals that they just don't pencil. So how did you actually get that first one to make sense?
The first one was I went to LoopNet and Crexy, and this said I had just got into the market, which was Oklahoma City, and I was probably shopping around for the last month and a half to 2 months, calling brokers and just writing down their contact information from LoopNet and Crexy and these other resources. If you just look up commercial real estate in this market, you'll get a lot of the new marks, the Marcus and Millichap, and you can write down their contact information and just have a plan to really touch up with them maybe every 2 to 3 months. And for me, I got that contact information from LoopNet and Crexy, and I called up this gal for this property. It was in my buy box, but the listing was about 2 years old. And she said, "Hey, that one already sold, but I do know someone that owns a 16-unit building, and he tried to sell 2 years ago and it just didn't happen. So let me follow up with him and see what we can do." And so from there, it did take some touching base with her to actually kind of move her along in that process. But about after a week of following up with her, she said, "Yeah, I've got these financials and I'll send them to you." And from there, she told me what the seller wanted to on the purchase price side, and it was 47,000 a door. And at that market at that time, the average price for this neighborhood was, let's say, 70. And so right off the bat, that looked like a deal to me. And I had been looking for the last month and a half, so I knew what was at the market, and I knew that this had to be a deal, depending as long as it wasn't vacant or something really abnormal was wrong with it. And that was the case. I looked at the numbers, did the underwriting, it looked good. And from there, we just kind of moved along in that process from vetting the deal, having another person put eyes on my underwriting to check it, and getting it under contract, the LOI process, and DD, and just moving towards closing.
That's awesome, man. And where is this one?
That is in Oklahoma City.
Awesome. And did you do this one with Mike, your partner?
I did not. I think what ended up happening there was it was small enough that I felt I could take it down with my own. Well, I actually had a 1031 at the time, so I was planning to move that 1031 capital, which was about half of the equity we needed to close. So I would have been the majority owner of it. And I thought I could just bring in one or two more JV partners that could help me with the day to day and then the capital side as well to get it done. And so Mike and I did not go in on that property. And I just did a joint venture with another couple investors.
Where did you find those other investors?
Well, one was actually from my church. And this was, of course, after about 45 days, for 30 to 45 days of sweating, trying to call
Mm.
every investor I knew. And again, no one wanted to invest. And
Yep.
so I finally got a hold of this guy and he looked at it more and he moved forward. And then two other investors came in that were actually, one was introduced to me through Mike. And then that one investor introduced me to another person who they had worked in the past. And so there were my three equity partners.
That's great. And did you have any hard money on the line at that point?
I had about $10,000 in attorney fees and EMD.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that because when people are, a lot of people that I talk to are trying to get into the business, right? And it's so glamorous. It seems so glamorous, like and amazing, right? To get into this business. But what we kind of leave out is all the hard work and sweat and fear and anxiety. If we don't close this, there's money on the line, there's reputations on the line, right? You made this you made this relationship with this broker who shared this deal with you. And if we don't close these deals, if we don't see it through, it's a lot of pressure, and it's not all glamour. The big apartment owner, you know what I mean? It's not all like that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And Nico, if I may too, I've heard stories of people that lose $500,000 in EMD, or I've heard of some people losing 1 million. And that was a
Mhm.
couple years ago in the Phoenix market. And so very hot, very competitive. And there was just a shift in the market, but it's not all this sexy, glamorous stuff. I'll even share with you what I did today, which I'm trying to source offerings off market. And I've been on the county assessor's website and trying to do these skip traces for the last 6 hours. So I've been looking at a computer screen for 6 hours out of my mind. But when you own your own business and you're hungry, you do what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. Caleb, this is great conversation. I'm excited. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, any other deals, and maybe after that, we don't have to necessarily go in order, but is there another deal that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. Yeah, we closed on a 30 unit apartment in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that again was sourced off market, very similar to how that first story went. Only this one took longer. So I had been building that relationship with a broker for about 6 months. And we looked at a couple deals together and nothing happened. But with this broker, he called me up and I think it was a Tuesday, maybe a Wednesday. And he said, "Hey, Caleb, I just called this owner and he said he has an LOI in hand. This deal's completely off market. But he said, if you present me with another offer by Friday, I'll consider it." And so that was a market we already had property management relationships and we owned something probably 2 hours south of that market. And we wanted to get into the Albuquerque market. So we went ahead and dived into the numbers and realized that there was some meat on the bone and opportunity there. So we went ahead and submitted our offer quickly, within 2 days. And then we closed that about 60 to 90 days later.
Yeah, speed is very important in this game. If you can give a broker a turnaround within 24 hours, I mean, that speaks volumes. And a lot of times, if a broker is willing to give me a pocket listing or something, I'll give them a response, right away, and even an offer right away. Or at the very minimum, I'm going to be talking, just sharing some thoughts and ideas about the property, because they're willing to go that extra mile and give you something that is not necessarily listed yet. It's important to kind of follow up on that. Awesome. And I have a really good friend who's in the Albuquerque market as well, but they're doing like conversions, like office, uh,
Mm,
or like like industrial to multifamily conversions, and cool stuff over there.
mhm.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your team for that property.
Yeah, so that was a syndication and it wasn't a joint venture. I did bring Mike in on that deal, and I believe we had four four total GPs on that. One KP, meaning he was the key principal, so he had the liquidity. Whenever you get larger loans, this was a, I think, $3.3 million loan. Whenever you are getting a loan like that, you need 10% liquidity of the loan amount, and then you need the net worth. So you need someone with a net worth of the loan amount. so $3.3 million. Dollars. And at that time, I did not have that net worth. So we brought someone to be that KP. And then another person brought the capital raising and the asset management experience. And then someone else that had other operational experience. And that was a team.
Yeah, it's banks look at that, right? So they look at, aside from the KP that you mentioned, right? Because you need that net worth and liquidity to back the loan, but they also look at experience, and the asset management experience is important. You got to be able to prove that out.
Mhm.
What kind of split did you do? Was it 70-30 typical, or 60-40, 80-20? What did you do?
Yep, that was a 70-30 split with a 6% pref, I believe. And then a 2% asset management fee, maybe like a 3.5% acquisition fee, and no waterfall.
Awesome. And um, how long was that projected hold, and how long have you had it for?
hmm So we closed that, I believe, June of 2022, and the projected hold time is 5 years.
Oh, it was a good time to close then,
It
huh?
was. It was, man. Yeah. It was
All
definitely
right,
good.
cool. Have you run into any challenges on that?
You know, on that one, I think the biggest challenges we've had to start off, well, we had problems with contractors. And so at that time, man, we could not find workers. And I think one contractor, he gave us a bid to renovate one of the interiors for like $35,000. And, our projected expense was like 6,500 or maybe 7,000. So it was like, wow, man, I don't know what you're going to put gold in the shower or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, so we had some of those challenges and just trying to find contractors, and that ended up penciling out because a property management company knew someone. And so, long story short, they just ended up coming over here, and that fixed that. But the other problem that we're kind of running into right now is that New Mexico is a blue state, meaning they don't have the best landlord tenant laws. And so they favor the tenant a little bit more than other states like red states. And so with this rental assistance, when rental assistance is whenever the tenant asks the government, it's a subsidy, so they want some help with their rent. And we've been waiting on checks for this for a couple of these residents since June, July, since we closed the property. And so we just now, I guess they just got cut, but then they went to the wrong property manager, and so now they're writing another check. And so it's just kind of some of that. I mean, we're still getting those checks at the end of the day, and we're also experiencing a harder challenge with evicting people because it's a landlord, or excuse me, a tenant friendly state, more so compared to the landlord. So it's kind of important, just thinking about whenever you are getting into a market, know what you're getting into, because those are some challenges you might have to overcome.
Yeah, again, Caleb, great insight. And what is your favorite role or on these deals? Do you have a specific role in every deal, or do you take on different roles on each deal?
Hmm. Right now, I'm in the asset management seat, and so we'll have a weekly call with our property manager, and I'll be on there kind of just dissecting what we're expecting to be done and going over deadlines and costs and things like that. And then again, bringing the deal does get you some GP. So I'm still very active and aggressive in pursuing other offerings. So I'm underwriting and having those conversations with brokers and sellers to source more deals.
Awesome, man. And you mentioned something earlier, a little, you were talking about capital raising and it's challenging, right? And I found the same scenario happen to me on a couple of different capital raises that I've done, and I just didn't enjoy it. And I ended up kind of giving that away to somebody else, because there are people out there that specifically, want to just be capital raisers, right? And they're good at it, and they have the resources, they have the systems and processes built up, they have the investor database built up, and they're ready to go. That's my form of doing it too. So for everybody listening out there, you don't have to play, every part in this. You can designate, and you should be designating the roles out. And until maybe one day, after 10, 15 years or however long it might take, you have all the resources in house. But for now, you're going to have to, likely, contract that stuff out.
That's right.
Cool, Caleb. All right. What markets are you looking at now? What are you working on now? Are you expanding? What are you looking at?
hmm So right now we own in Arizona, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. And I think it's really easy once, at least it's easier whenever you own something in a market just to scale. As long as you're happy in the market and you have those systems and processes in place, I'm finding it much easier just to go ahead and scale and continue to buy in those markets we already own. So we're still pursuing in Oklahoma and New Mexico, and then we're also expanding into Texas. And I feel like everyone's expanding into Texas. So that's been very competitive, and we're working through that right now. And we're also staying open to different emerging markets. Dave Lindahl, he wrote a book called Emerging Real Estate Markets and really goes into the weeds about how to define what that market looks like. And so we're looking for markets that have those metrics and looking to invest in those as well.
Excellent. And are you working on anything on the back end of your business? For example, building up some systems, getting new software, data programs, or something like that?
Yeah, we're trying Instagram ads for our podcast. And so there's that. There's always campaigns you're working on, like what CRM you're going to use. We use Active Campaign. And so every week we're doing a podcast, email blast, and then once a month, just a newsletter. And gosh, and since we are going to direct mail marketing, also looking into direct mailers to these sellers. So those are a couple things that we're working on now.
That's awesome. And you mentioned that you're sitting in front of the computer for 6 hours, and this is what it takes, number one. But are you doing a lot of direct to seller? Because I know that me, as the deal, I'm the acquisitions guy, and I love looking at deals, whether that be off market, on market. Are you also like, how are you sourcing your deals?
Yeah. So first off, it's again those broker relations, and but we're in this challenging time where compared to last year, we've seen a 75% decline in transaction volume in apartment buildings, and so there's not a lot of activity going on, and we are still looking at brokers and to for them to source deals for us. But now we're going direct to seller because I think that's an edge that we can have over a broker and save the seller some a commission fee. So what we're doing is I'm learning it right now and it's kind of a long process, but going into a system called PropStream, which allows you to look into a market and really, let's say if you want duplexes or if you want 50 plus unit buildings, you can go in there and tweak the requirements and it'll just pop up in this market what properties meet those requirements. And then you can skip trace and find the phone numbers, emails of the owners. Now, that sounds really easy, but let's say I had a list of 350 and I want to say 50 of those actually came back as positive. I got some positive leads from there. So phone numbers and emails, and the other 300, 280 didn't produce any leads because an LLC owns them. And so I'm kind of in the process now of going to the Secretary of State office, and you can actually look up what the owner is of that LLC, and then if another LLC owns that, it can get really complicated. So you kind of just have to get in there and just get dirty with it and try to figure it out. Because every market will be different as well, with different government agencies that you have to go through. But that's another thing we're doing right now just to be creative.
Yeah, you got to do it. And it's crazy. You're getting into the weeds with every aspect of the business, and that's just wonderful, man. You're going to know everything inside and out, and then at some point you'll be designating, delegating, right? So
Mhm.
great, Caleb. I'm going to move on to our final question, It's a doozy, my man. So just be prepared for this. Here we go. And then we're going to get the listeners some form of contacting you so that they can reach out to you, learn a little bit more about you, connect with you, potentially do a deal with you. So here it goes. Let's imagine it was 100 years from now. You have great grandchildren. They want to write a book about you. What would you want them to title this book? Or what characteristical traits would you like them to highlight about you and your life?
Mm. That's such a good question, brother. I love it. A couple things that come to mind is the one is to live is to live for Christ, and to die is gain. And I'm going through this moment right now where I'm really learning. I'm in a lot of these social groups at church, and I think, even let's say if you're going to a real estate meetup, it's not really about the meetup, but it's about the relationship that you develop there. And so whenever I'm in a church group, it's not about attending church. That's not the point. The point is about the relationship in there. And so that's one of those topics I'd like them to remember, just that he got really into the relationship side of it. And of course, being a hard worker, and not working for earthly measures, but heavenly measures. And gosh, man, I feel like I could keep going, but I'll stop there.
Caleb, that's beautiful, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I love it. All right, let's get some form of contacting you.
Mhm. Yeah, so they can check us out. First, go to our podcast, which is called From Trial to Triumph. And they can also check us out at redseacapitalgroup.com.
Awesome. Well, Caleb, it's been a real pleasure getting to know you today. Really happy that we finally connected. I know we've been trying to do it for a little while, and I appreciate you and everything that you're doing for, obviously, for the industry and for the investors out there, and for my listeners. So thank you so much for providing the value today.
Yeah, Nico, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing, man. So just keep it up. Love it.
All right. Hey, Small Axe community. I would like to say thank you for listening to another episode of my podcast, where we show you how to use your small axe to build a lasting empire. Now, if you liked what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, go to my website at smalaxecommunities.com. Book a call with me. And until the next episode, keep sharpening those axes.